Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Amy Darling. I am the Director of Events at Campaigns and Elections. Here with today's presentation, Cutting Edge Advocacy Tools for 2025 to Connect Stakeholders to Decision Makers. Our presentation today is brought to us by Telephone Town Hall Meeting and Tele-Town Hall. I will introduce our speakers in a moment, but first, just a couple of housekeeping things. It's very similar if you've been with us before. But down on the bottom right of your screen, you'll see tabs for chats and questions. If you have questions throughout the presentation, we encourage you to drop them in the chat. In the chat, everyone on this presentation will be able to see your name and questions. If you have a question you'd rather not ask publicly, feel free to drop it there in the questions tab. Our team here will see both, and we'll be able to answer them throughout today's conversation. We also will be having poll questions. We've got 3 of them today popping up. So when those pop up on your screen, just click yes or no, and we'll capture that information for later. So with that, we'll get started. I'm going to introduce Kurt Cerveny, President of Telephone Town Hall Meeting, and Sean Thompson, President of Tele-Town Hall.
Hi, Kurt. Do you want to start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
My name's Kurt Cerveny, and thank you for joining us today. We're not going to be too long on this. We appreciate you being on today. We're going to be covering a variety of subjects which you signed up for, and I'll try not to talk too much. I've been at this doing the telephone town hall business for about 15, 20 years now. My hair wasn't white when I started this, and we hope we've got some interesting subjects to talk about today that you can take to heart and potentially use down the road. Sean, you're next. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sean Thompson. I'm the president of Tele-Town Hall, and we've been providing innovative technologies to advocacy organizations for the better part of 20 years. So with that, I think we can start with our presentation. But I also wanted to introduce a special guest. We're also joined by Patrick Davis. Patrick, would you like to give a brief introduction?
Thanks, Sean and Kurt. I'm Patrick Davis. I work with Telephone Town Hall Meeting, and I've been with them since 2014.
Great. Thank you, Patrick. All right, with that, why don't we dive into our presentation? And again, if anybody has any questions at any time, feel free to type them into the question field, and we'll address them as they come through. So in terms of advocacy, again, today we're going to be talking about some innovative solutions that can be used to really improve your advocacy efforts. As many people know, legislative and executive outcomes aren't shaped by lobbyists themselves. They definitely play a role in the process, but a lot of what we're going to be talking today is actually leveraging everyday citizens as political activists to actually influence those decisions by lawmakers. And elected officials really need to consider that constituent input to justify their actions so that they stay in a position of power. Today, we're going to talk about, again, some leading tools that can be used to actually connect constituents with their lawmakers so that you can influence outcomes. We'll begin with talking about some of the challenges. So recently, we've seen an oversaturation of emails, cold text, social media that's limited the effectiveness of these channels. We've also seen, I know a lot of people have seen these cookie cutter emails or form letters that have been sent, with basically 2 cookie cutter talking points to elected officials' offices, and they certainly aren't as effective as they used to be. We're also going to be talking about how short form one-way communication makes it difficult to explain complex or nuanced issues. New regulations are presenting challenges to reaching mobile phones. And again, mobile phones are where the greatest number of our constituents live today, especially as more of them give up their landline telephones and become mobile-only households. Also targeting the right constituents. We'll talk about the need to have accurate modeling and mobile phone data. And also, the scale or the magnitude of the pressure that you put on lawmakers needs to be significant so that they can't really ignore that pressure or ignore the issue. In terms of navigating some of these challenges, we're going to talk about how these tools can be used to generate a successful outcome. So reaching constituents compliantly, and primarily we'll talk about the FCC's TCPA. So how do you reach people on their mobile devices compliantly given the restrictions there? Also talking about why we recommend using a two-way live personal conversation format to really educate constituents instead of these short one-way forms of communication. We mentioned cookie cutter emails and form letters. We're going to talk about the importance of sharing personal stories from constituents instead of using generic talking points. We'll talk about how you achieve scale so that, again, decision makers can ignore your issue. And then we'll talk about how these tools allow you to track the metrics of your advocacy campaign so that you can analyze the impact and you can pivot as needed to adjust your tactics. And then finally, all of these new technologies are really important. It's something that organizations should be looking at so that you can really improve the scalability, the reach, and the effectiveness of your campaigns. We're going to start by talking about a tool that's been around for a while, and that's the patch-through call. So I've shared some examples in the mainstream media and also some conversations that we've had with elected officials. There was a story in the New York Times, here's why you should call, not email your legislators, in which Daniel Victor conducted interviews with a number of staff members on Capitol Hill and in state legislators and also their communications staff. And what they found was that large volumes of constituent phone calls carried more weight than social media, email, snail mail, and even in-person visits. And that's because these patch calls can really bring a legislative office to a halt. They're answering the telephone calls and they're typically asking, are you a part of the district? What's your position on this issue? And so making sure that you have sustained calls right up to the point where the legislation is going to be voted on is critical. There was also an independent study that was conducted by the Congressional Management Fund. This really analyzed email technologies and form letters, and it showed that congressional offices really don't have enough time to read through all of the emails and the form letters. If they do, it sometimes takes as long as 9 weeks to sift through that mail. And then I also wanted to share an article called "The Advocacy Cap" by Englund and Hankin. And what they said was that phone calls are the hardest form of contact to ignore, much more effective than emails and letters. Lastly, I worked on Capitol Hill for a number of years for Congressman Rob Simmons, and he always told me that patch-through calls were incredibly effective. They were a pain in the butt, but they worked. There's also an interview that's widely available online with former Senator Max Baucus, where he talks about the effectiveness of these patch calls. So again, there are ways that historically people have done live patch calls with professional call center agents. People have done auto patch calls. Today, what we're going to talk about is some of the tools that can deliver these patch calls to mobile phones where people live compliantly and at greater scale more effectively. But we'll also talk about things like driving supporters to events and rallies. We'll talk about conducting surveys so that you can identify action takers, things of that nature. Before we dive into these new products, Kurt, Patrick, is there anything you want to add?
No, I think you covered it. Let's get to it.
All right. So the first two new solutions that we're going to talk about have to do with telephone town hall events, and those are mobile waiting room and synchronized text during a telephone town hall. But before we do that, we have some new faces here today that haven't necessarily been a part of our campaigns and political webinars. So Kurt, would you mind just giving people the basics about what is a telephone town hall and why is it different from Zoom and other conference calls?
Absolutely. We've been doing telephone town halls for quite a few years, and basically what we do is we call tens of thousands of people at any one time, and they join the conversation. We call them. They get a recorded message, and in some cases, if it's mobile, it's a live person that actually inspires them to stay on the call. Then we start the call and have a telephone town hall meeting with them. Now, at one time when Zoom came along, we were worried we could lose all our market to Zoom because, oh my gosh, Zoom's going to replace us. No, we work with Zoom with telephone town halls. The reason is because when you do a telephone town hall, what happens is that people pick up the phone and join it. Unlike Zoom, you have to log in, much like you're doing with this webinar, at a specific time to join the conversation. So when you're doing a telephone town hall meeting, especially if it's like on Capitol Hill as an example, most people are very familiar with that. Most people call up at least 50 to 75,000 people at a time, and about 20% of the people join the call and stay on the call for X amount of time. We integrate in the Zoom aspect of people doing it and send out notices to people if they want to watch the thing as well. The Zoom people of that entire call is maybe 1 to 2% of the overall audience. So I'm laying the foundation today and describing what basically a telephone town hall is, and we call people up to get them on the call. What we're going to talk about today is what you can do with that telephone town hall to enhance the time that you're investing in that call. You know, you've got a Congress member on there talking. Well, you want to do a lot of other things and just talk to them. You want to gather information. You want to have them do things one way or the other. And that's what we're going to add to this conversation of what happens when you do a telephone town hall. So they're great to do. A lot of them, for instance, you're going to see a lot of telephone town halls coming up in Congress. A lot of people will do it right after the State of the Union. They might do it that night or the next day because they got something to talk about. Well, during that call, what else can you get out of the call? You know, do you do a text after it? Do you do polling during it? Do you do some opt-in information? Do you push people to do things? And so that's what we're going to talk about today and how we're going to expand what you do when you do a telephone town hall itself. Back to you, Sean.
Okay, thanks, Kurt. So the purpose of the Tele-Town hall in advocacy terms is, number one, to really educate your constituents. Number two, to also persuade undecided constituents. And then, as Kurt just mentioned, we're trying to get them to take some immediate action. So how do you do that? Well, number one, with telephone town halls, you can ask participants to press a keystroke and we can connect them immediately with their legislator. So we do have that functionality. We talked about the scalability of telephone town halls. So you're reaching tens of thousands of people at the same time, and you're really able to educate them. You can invite elected officials onto the call, as Patrick mentioned. You can also invite guest experts from anywhere in the world. And so what that's doing is lending credibility to your position, a position of authority. And, in addition to that, it's really important to allow your constituents to, instead of having the elected official talk down to the audience the whole time, really having constituents share their own personal stories, because it's much more effective for a constituent to hear from their neighbors and friends, and to be able to sort of relate to that personal story. And then also, be able to share these personal stories with the lawmakers when you connect them to them down the road. So unlike any other, short form of communication that's one way, a Tele-Town hall provides a unique format for you to have an interactive live conversation with your constituents. And that's absolutely necessary when you're trying to convey complex or nuanced issues. And then the other piece of this is really that you're kind of building a relationship with your advocates, with your supporters, so that you'll be able to call on them when a similar issue comes up. So let's say you've got an issue before the state legislature now. Then let's say you've actually got a ballot measure that's coming up in 2026, in November of 2026. You're able to re-engage that same audience of supporters time after time and build a relationship with them. Today, we're going to be talking about the two new products that I mentioned, mobile waiting room and synchronized text during a Tele-Town hall. Mobile waiting room is going to expand your reach to cell phones compliantly, and synchronized text is going to be that other call to action besides the instant transfers. But before I do, Patrick, is there anything you would like to add?
I would just like to, foot stomp one thing that you mentioned. I've seen this work very effectively for advocacy organizations, advocating maybe a complex issue that's going on at their state legislature, and maybe it's a tax issue, and this taxpayer group calls all of their members and they ask them, or they explain to them what the issue is that they're wanting them to advocate for or against at the state legislature, and they might invite them to a day at the Capitol, or they might just invite them to call their legislator, and on this telephone town hall, they give them the talking points, so that when the call goes in, it isn't that cookie cutter call. It's a call from a real constituent, and they can explain their issue in their own way. That's really the most effective way to communicate with a telephone town hall meeting. It's coming from a live person.
Thanks, Patrick. And with that, let me just share a little bit more about mobile waiting room, which again is one of these new advocacy tools we discussed. So historically, you'd be able to call landline telephones and play that, pre-recorded message inviting people into the Tele-Town hall. What has changed now is that we can now compliantly call cell phones at the same time that we call landlines. We bifurcate the two parts of your list. And with the cell phones, instead of getting that pre-recorded message, they're hearing a live operator repeating a short welcome script. So now, as we're seeing in a lot of districts, 60% of your constituents may have mobile phones only. So we can call both universes at the same time. And the great thing about including mobile phones, is that we're seeing higher connect rates because the data is better. And we're also seeing more live answers and participants in your Tele-Town hall. So you're effectively doubling or even greater than doubling your outreach by reaching constituents on their mobile phones where they live. Patrick, did you want to add something, or Kurt?
I noticed something here in the text from Matthew Thornton. Matthew asks,
Okay.
Why do telephone town halls and not a Zoom webinar? Well, the perfect example is we can call more people at one time than can be on a Zoom call, and they can choose to participate. You just kind of surprise people with a phone call. You don't have to rely on people remembering when to log into a Zoom. You don't have to spend the first 5 to 10 minutes of the event helping people with their technical problems with Zoom. You can get right to your messaging. That's really the best example I can give, Matthew.
Yeah, and to Patrick's point, we did a telephone town hall for an advocacy group recently. We had over 600,000 people as telephone participants, and we only had 300 people as Zoom participants. So we do have a feature whereby you can integrate your telephone town hall with any third-party webcast platform like Kurt mentioned. But you're going to see, because we're sending hundreds of outbound invitation calls per second, as opposed to asking them to remember to click on a link at the start time, you're going to see 250 times as many participants on the phone. And Lucy Frost just made a comment. I don't know anyone who has a landline phone anymore, and we're obviously seeing that growing trend. So the important thing here is that typically, 75% of your audience now is going to be on their mobile devices. So now I'd just like to quickly switch over to the other new product for Tele-Town hall events, and that's synchronized texting during a telephone town hall. And this is only possible, again, because we're able to compliantly reach mobile phones at the same time. So really the authentic conversation that your organization has with your constituents, with your supporters, really primes them for the action that you're going to ask them to take. And it's really going to boost that action that people take. We've typically seen it anywhere from 3 to 4 times as many people that are going to take the action versus that might take it during, let's say, a cold text message that you send to them, or social media asking them to, let's say, click to call into their legislator. So we're going to talk today primarily about using text to patch. But there'll be some other applications. So what happens is when somebody's on a Tele-Town hall, they're more engaged, they're more excited about the issue. And if you send that synchronized text message to them at that point in time, you're going to take advantage of that momentum. And you're going to see, again, 3 to 4 times as many people take that action. So how does it work? We typically send the text messages immediately after the telephone town hall ends, and that way they're not pulled away from the conversation itself. But the text message itself, number one, thanks them for participating in the telephone town hall. So you can see this example on the right-hand side of your screen. And then we have a compelling ask, why do they need to contact their legislator? And then they simply click on that telephone number in the text to call into an inbound patch hotline. Why do we not just have the phone number of the legislator there? Because then that phone call is initiated by the device and we don't have any metrics to know, okay, John Doe clicked on the phone number to call his congressman. But if we're using an inbound patch hotline, we know Kurt clicked on the phone number. We know he connected with Congressman X. We know he was on the call for 5 minutes. So we have all of those metrics, and then this gives you the ability to analyze the impact of your text to patch campaign. And then lastly, I did want to say that we're seeing people use two of our new features for our peer-to-peer texting platform. One of them is Gabby Graphic, and that's essentially using a personal image with a 60-second or less audio clip to really grab your audience's attention, legitimize the source of your text message, and really add a personal, relatable touch. So Gabby Graphic, or we also have a built-in HD video compression tool. Using these types of things, sending it out as a double MMS along with the text itself is going to increase engagement even further. Before we jump to our next solution, Kurt or Patrick, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I think that we're going to take our first survey.
Okay, excellent. So if you want to learn anything more about telephone town hall advocacy features, so mobile waiting room or the synchronized text during a telephone town hall, please let us know here, and we'd be happy to give you your own personal demo of the product. Okay, with that, I'd like to move to our third advocacy solution, and that's live voice broadcast. So you can think of live voice broadcast as a compliant auto call to mobile devices, but it's not actually an auto call. Number one, the system that we're sending it out from is not an auto dialer. And number two, instead of sending a pre-recorded message, we're actually delivering a live personal voice message at scale. So we're dialing hundreds, thousands of telephone numbers per second. And then when somebody picks up the telephone or goes to voicemail, we connect them with the live voice of an advocate for your campaign. So it could be the executive director of your organization, it could be an elected official, it could be an expert in the field, and they're repeating a short message trying to get you to take some action. So it could be a one-way message. If you'd like to say, I'm just calling to remind you to, show up to the rally at our Capitol on Friday afternoon. Or we also have the flexibility to basically ask people to press a keystroke on their phone so that we can then take some action. I'm going to give you some examples of that in just a minute. But again, live voice broadcast allows you to reach people on their mobile devices where they live. It's a really easy product to set it up. You could set it up same day. All you need is that star speaker. You need a script. You need the mobile telephone list. And then you need the telephone number that you want to use as the outgoing caller ID. And we have a very simple interface that allows that star speaker to get in front of the script, click a button to start dialing hundreds, thousands of telephone numbers per second. And then they're simply repeating that script. And with this tool, you're really able to send that personal message to thousands, even millions of people in the same day. So it's quite scalable. As I talked about, there's the ability to urge people to press a keystroke to take some action. So here are the actions that we have used most frequently with advocacy organizations. Number one, you can have them press a keystroke to go into this inbound patch hotline, and we can connect them dynamically with their lawmaker to advocate on behalf of your issue. Number two, when somebody presses that keystroke, we can actually connect them compliantly to an IVR survey. Even though an IVR survey is pre-recorded, by them pressing that keystroke, they're opting in to hear the pre-recorded survey. And what we're doing there is identifying the action takers. We could also connect them to a live call center agent, so it doesn't necessarily need to be an IVR survey. Lastly, we've seen a lot of advocacy organizations use this to drive people to events. So we can have them press that keystroke to RSVP for a telephone town hall or for a physical event or a rally. Kurt, what's the benefit of collecting an RSVP instead of just asking them to attend the event?
We did this mostly during this last cycle for political rallies. And we saw an increase because they actually, in the case that I used it on, without naming names, they actually tracked the people who came in. And they got about a 20% boost in attendance. And what happened was people that actually RSVP'd, there's a certain percentage, we don't know what that percentage is every time, but there is a percentage of people, once they RSVP, feel so much more obligated to attend the event because they push that button and say, darn it, they know we're coming, I better show up. And so that's one reason you do something like that. It does matter, and it does increase your physical turnout for specific events, and it has worked. And I've got many cases where it has worked out. Back to you.
Thanks, Kurt. And yeah, thank you, Lucy and Sherry, for your questions. An IVR is basically an interactive voice response system. So think of it as just an automated survey or an automated poll. So it might say something like, hi, this is Sean from Tele-Town Hall. We're trying to, we're reaching out to constituents to find out how you feel about this new legislation, bill, whatever. And press 1 if you support it, press 2 if you're opposed to it, press 3 if you're undecided. And then it could go to the next question. So complex branching logic. So that's what an IVR survey is. And the same thing could be accomplished by a professional live call center. It's just that the point is that we have different tools that for different budgets out there. The IVR automated survey is a little bit more budget friendly. But with the professional live call center, you're actually going to get probably a higher response rate. So there are definitely positives and minuses to every solution that's out there. Patrick, is there anything that you wanted to add to the live voice broadcast product?
No, I don't. I'm really excited about the next product you're going to talk about. I've used this a lot.
Okay, and before we get to a couple other questions, so I would like to go now to our second polling question. If you'd like to learn more about live voice broadcast, please let us know in this poll, and we'd be happy to share with you a personal demo of the product. Now, piggybacking on this notion of a live voice broadcast is a somewhat similar product. It's called Live Direct to Voicemail. The difference here is instead of delivering personal voice at scale to both live answers and voicemails, with Live Direct to Voicemail, we're delivering it only to the voicemail of your constituents. And so there are several benefits associated with that. But again, it's compliant because 1, we're not using an auto dialer, and 2, we're not using a pre-recorded voice. We're actually having a star speaker repeat a short script, and everybody's getting a full iteration of that personal voice message. So it is more, cost effective than one-to-one professional calls, or certainly it takes a lot less time than, let's say, volunteers making live one-to-one calls on behalf of your organization. What are the benefits of live direct to voicemail? Number 1, it's more positively perceived than, let's say, robocalls or auto calls. And that's because people aren't receiving multiple rings on their telephone. Sometimes it doesn't ring at all. Sometimes they get a quick partial ring, and then they see, oh, wow, all of a sudden I have a voicemail from this organization. This is new technology to a lot of people, and so it's intriguing. And so we see a lot of people, the actual listen rates for live direct to voicemail are much higher than we see for auto calls or robocalls, for example. Also, more constituents are likely to get the complete message, and they do have the ability to replay that message if they're missing any key details. Like, let's say, okay, we need to know where the rally is on Friday. We need to know what time it is. They can go back and listen to that message. And just like live voice broadcast, it's really easy to get one of these events set up in the same day. All you need is the star speaker that's going to be delivering that personal message. You need the script. You need the list of mobile telephone numbers, and you need the telephone number that you want to use as the caller ID. Now talking. Oh, please, Patrick. Yes.
Let me add one example. In this last election cycle, I used what I call ringless voicemails to deliver 2 really basic messages. One was to drive people to an event, just to remind them that they were invited to participate in an event. The second one was I did them in 2 languages. So I made the message short enough that it could be read in English and Spanish repeatedly, and it just got delivered over and over again. And however you received it, you could hear it in the language that you prefer. It was very effective.
And I have an example where we used what Patrick terms ringless voicemail. We had a campaign in a congressional district to a state that has all mail ballots, and we sent out and when you do an all mail ballot in a congressional district, they usually do all the counts. So by the election night, you know about 90% of all the votes that are coming in. Well, we did 150,000 between two basic counties, the two largest counties for this particular district. And out of those two, by the time the tally came in, when the polls closed on election night, this particular candidate was 4,000 votes down. Those 4,000, that tally represented all probably counts until the last couple of days when people actually dropped off ballots if they didn't mail them in time and stuff like that, because that's what you encourage people to do, is drop them off. Don't mail them, but drop them off as you're getting closer to the election. Those 150,000, as we say, ringless voicemails created a situation where by the end, the candidate won by 2,500 votes. If they hadn't done this, they probably wouldn't have won. In this next go round, where you've got a lot of special situations coming up in elections, for instance, you better probably be encouraging people to come out and vote, because what happens is they don't even know there's a vote coming in. But in a general election like they had, where it's huge turnout, you've still got a lot of people that don't get around to dropping off their ballots or getting themselves down there. And if you want that last minute push, these ringless voicemails are invaluable, and probably made a difference on winning and losing an election on something Patrick and I tried out at the last minute, because it was pretty new, this campaign cycle. So I encourage people to really take a peek and see if they want to use this for anything they need to drive people to do something at the very last moment. Back to you, Sean.
Thanks, Kurt. And we had a great question from Sherry, who is asking, do you see unknown phone number or likely spam when you're placing these phone calls out to mobile phones? Or can you, basically display the organization's name? So we do something before any calls that we place. So whether it's a telephone town hall event, whether it's your live direct to voicemail, whether it's your live voice broadcast, we register the caller ID for Stir Shaken with the carriers. And so by doing this, number one, the carriers that send out the calls are actually going to say that this is legitimate traffic. This is not spam. This is not fraudulent traffic. The second thing that we're able to do on behalf of your organization is, some organizations' telephone numbers might be dirty, if you will. So they might appear in No More Robo as likely spam because there's been, complaints on message boards and such. But we actually have an internal process by which we whitelist your telephone number to be used for calls, for the caller ID for our calls. And that essentially gives, new life to that telephone number. So that's something that we can do on a regular basis to avoid likely spam or unknown number coming through on people's smartphones. So that's an excellent question. And that really does improve the live pickup rate. We also had a question from Matthew. Matthew was asking, in terms of telephone town halls, we understand that, you can have lists as large as 100,000. Well, gosh, we've done a call as large as 1.2 million people before, but the question really comes down to how affordable is this? And the point here is that telephone town halls are very affordable, and they're one of the best tools out there in terms of trying to cast a wide net and have your supporters self-select themselves into the process as action takers. So it really works out to pennies per contact when you're doing a call, and we actually have tiered systems so that we can create a budget, for any organization that works. We'd be happy, to send you pricing information, Matthew, if you want to reach out to us. And then I also have some other questions I'll get to in terms of the folks that we're calling. How do you come up with that list? So some of our clients, some of our advocacy organizations provide that list to us in the first place. Some of these records that they give us, let's say they don't have mobile telephone numbers, so we are able to perform a reverse phone append and append good mobile phone numbers to those records. Maybe we just have a landline, maybe we just have a name and address. The other thing that we can do is we have access to a database of over 235 million records. And so we can purchase additional records to really, supplement that internal list that you have. So lots of different options. We can search by demographics. We can search by models, anything that you want to try to narrow down likely supporters in that process. But again, the telephone town hall is a great cost-effective way to allow your constituents to self-select themselves as supporters or action takers.
Hey, Sean, before we start, just to interrupt for a sec, before we start answering a couple more of these questions, let's do that last survey question if we can, okay?
Okay, yeah, so if we could ask if anybody's interested in learning more about live direct to voicemail, please let us know by responding to this poll. And I did want to finish up with that last slide. So most commonly, we've seen advocacy organizations use this live direct to voicemail to drive people to events. And a lot of times we've seen people boost their attendance at events by 20, 30%. So we actually also saw people use telephone town halls to drive people to events, to educate these people beforehand, to persuade them, and then drive them to a rally actually in Colorado. This was API Colorado, for example. We've also done, we did a carbon tax issue that was before the Washington state legislature. And we actually called through the entire state of Washington, doing 30 telephone town halls, each with different messaging, because sometimes we were calling, farmers or rural members of the community who might be hit with a regressive tax. Sometimes we had a different message for when we were calling into Seattle, in cities. So that was really an effective way that we could go around the state, tailor messaging, educate, persuade members, and then give them that opportunity to press a keystroke to patch through directly to their Washington state House members and senators. So those are some other examples. And then in addition to driving, supporters to telephone town halls, physical events with live direct to voicemail, of course, we are actually able to patch through people. You might think, okay, you need to do a live voice broadcast to have people press that keystroke, because if you're delivering a message on voicemail, how are they going to press a keystroke? Well, what we have today is that a lot of modern smartphones are using this visual voicemail software to actually transcribe the message. And so I gave you an example here in the center of this, or to the center right, where you can simply click to call on that telephone number into the inbound IVR, and then you can be connected dynamically to your elected official to advocate on behalf of the issues. So yes, even live direct to voicemail, which is an incredibly powerful new tool, can be used for patch throughs. Kurt, Patrick, anything else you want to add about live direct to voicemail before we respond to the remaining questions?
I think that I just want to emphasize your last point. If you send one of these ringless voicemails and you embed that phone number into the transcript, the person can then make that call on their own time, because that voicemail will sit in their voicemail until they delete it. And so they could make that call the next day after a telephone town hall meeting. They could make it in the coming days when they have time. But it's just really a convenient tool for citizens to interact with their elected officials.
That's a great point, Patrick. Yeah, you want to make sure that these patches are sustained, leading up to the vote, in the legislative branch, for example. So yeah, with these live direct to voicemails and also with the synchronized text, there's going to be some latency. So not everybody's going to click to patch through to their legislator this evening. They may do so, the next morning. They may do it 2 days from now. So you are going to have, a series of sustained patches. And as I mentioned before, there are other options available. There are auto patches, there are live call patches where, you basically can run a patch program over the course of multiple weeks, even if you wish. But the point is that all of these tools don't, stand on their own. It's really important to use multiple channels, text, calls. It's important to layer these tools on top of one another, because you might be able to reach, demographics better with one channel than another. Excuse me. We also had an excellent question from Ruth. Ruth said, could these tools and techniques be used in a political campaign instead of a physical town hall in an auditorium? So I think there are 2 points here. Kurt, do you want to take this up?
Yeah, I do. What happens on something like this, Sean, is that we actually have a client, not in the political business. We have a municipality that actually does one of these calls during one of their physical town hall meetings. It does a telephone town hall meeting as well. Why do they do this? They do this because you have the regular crowd that shuffles in on a physical meeting one way or the other. It's usually maybe 100 people show up for a physical meeting, and then this city in Texas chooses to call everybody at the same time to get the rest of the people to participate in. So what the difference in doing a telephone town hall as compared to a physical town hall meeting is, physical, when you get people that are very narrow, very focused, and how you talk to them is very different than when you do a telephone town hall, because the telephone town hall people that listen are not nearly as engaged, and you're talking to a much larger audience by multiple times over, thousands compared to hundreds, many thousands compared to hundreds. Your topics are a little bit more broad, they're not as narrow, they're not as specific, and you get a lot more accomplished in a much shorter period of time. So when you do a telephone town hall, again, broader subjects, more not as narrow, and you get to talk to a bunch more people at the same time. So it's more, most of the time it's just a different approach, and you just want to talk to a lot more people. A physical town hall meeting, when I first started doing some of this business in the Medicare business, they would get all these old people like me show up for a physical town hall meeting, and boy, they're all coming there and complaining, because that's what old people like me do when they go to a physical meeting, and they get their 10 or 15 people that would show up for the meetings. Well, then they decided, these big insurance companies who we do a lot of business with, hey, why don't we just call up everybody, then we don't have to deal with all this, and then they get to talk to tens of thousands of people at a given time. Much more cost effective, much better usage of time. So more of it's a replacement of a physical town hall meeting, not so much. They're really two different birds. Back to you, Sean.
Those are great points, Kurt. Yeah, and we sometimes call those meetings where there's a telephone town hall and an in-person meeting a hybrid meeting, and you find that it really just expands your reach exponentially. So sometimes we may have hundreds of people show up at the event itself, and then we might have another 50,000 people or 300,000 people on the telephone. So you're going to hear from a broader audience. You'll probably address more broad questions. And then some people just do a telephone town hall only, because one of the congressmen that told me this story, that he would typically do a physical town hall meeting. He'd get the same 25 people showing up every time. It would cost him about $10,000 for the facility, security, etc. For $10,000, he was able to call his entire congressional district, and he would typically have 20 to 30% of his district participate in some portion of that event. I also wanted to say that in terms of participation, you're typically getting 10 minutes with the average constituent. So you have their ears for a long and protracted period of time. And again, that makes it easier to explain some of these complex and nuanced issues and really build their support for your issue.
For an example of crowd size and stuff like that, the old Billy Joel song, the regular crowd shuffles in to go listen to him play at a piano bar. That's one size of a crowd, and that's your in-person meeting. Meanwhile, if you're really famous and stuff like that, like he's gotten, you can go play Madison Square Garden and stuff like that. That's what a telephone town hall will do for you as a comparison.
Yeah, and
Sean,
go ahead.
I noticed that Matthew Thornton had a previous question, which I think is about what we're talking about. He says, how do you ensure your advocates don't go rogue and say something unhelpful in a call with a legislator? Well, Matthew, the way that we do that is we manage this call for you. We will have a professional moderator, and we will have call screeners. And so that if one of your constituents goes rogue and starts saying something that you don't want them to say, we control the mute button. We can stop their call and have the legislator or the elected official react to what they were saying. Because remember, this is the elected officials or the legislators' show. This is not the show for the constituents. So they control the mute button, and they control who they call, actually.
That's a great point. Yeah. So even though it's very scalable, the conversation is very controlled. Only one person is talking at a time, and you have that ability to pre-screen questions. So, the other thing that we also got a great question from Ruth. Ruth asked, can we specify star speakers who are female or speak English with, say, a Bangladeshi accent? So yes, for number one, actually for all of these tools, let's take telephone town halls first. We have the ability to do multilingual simulcasts, And so a lot of our calls, we're doing them, we do the primary event in English, but then we have a Spanish simulcast with our professional interpreters at the exact same time, so that you're able to mobilize both demographics. We've done events in 8 languages at the same time before in California. So there's definitely a lot of flexibility with that. But same thing with live voice broadcast and live direct to voicemail. You can specify whether you want, a Bangladeshi speaking, accent star speaker, and you can decide, I'm only going to call this targeted audience that, wants to hear from this speaker. Then you can subdivide your audience and basically have a Spanish speaker deliver a message to Spanish speaking constituents. So it's very flexible.
In this country, Sean, people don't like to listen to people go back and forth like they go in Canada with French Canadian
That's a great
and
point. Yeah.
English. And in this country, they want to listen to one language or the other. So what happens is, if it's just a dual language like English, Spanish, there's a prompt and they can press one and they can listen to it, for instance, in Spanish, and they just listen to it in Spanish, and it's interpreted. It's not, we're not the UN. We don't translate perfectly. It's pretty close because people talk like me. They kind of babble. So anyway, but they listen to the whole thing there, and we can take questions from the Spanish side, but we read it over in English and it gets interpreted back to the other way. So we have ways to go back and forth and do this. So everybody gets to participate one way or the other. The Spanish has really picked up more and more and more. It's a very demanded language, but again, there's other languages that we do in this country. The second most prevalent language for people to want to use is Vietnamese, believe it or not, followed by many, many others. Political people are starting to use it. Believe it or not, the people that use it the most are probably the unions like SEIU. I mean, that's the one you're probably talking about, we've done 9 with them at the same time. Now, some of them we just dial directly and they don't have to listen to which language they want to press to, and that's how we tie it up. That's just a technical thing. But we can do that, and it's very important to do that for preferred language, what people want to listen to. It's missed opportunities if you don't reach out to people and speak to them in their language if you know what language they want to listen to. Back to you.
Yep. And I know we still have a number of other questions. I think we have time maybe for one more. Austin asked, would we need to provide a translator? Or is that an option you can provide? And the answer there is that we do have professional translators that we can provide. And a lot of times we're actually using, let's say, 2 translators, especially for a longer telephone town hall. Maybe it's an hour long and we're discussing more technical issues, so that they can basically trade off and stay fresh. And one of them can maybe work on the more technical terms or the statistics. So you don't necessarily have to have those interpreters on your side. Patrick and Kurt both also mentioned our full service approach. So we do have professional moderators in English. We have professional screeners. If you're trying to collect, let's say, email addresses or other information from participants during the telephone town hall, we can provide that full service staffing for you.
And part of that full service staffing includes a full reporting package after every telephone town hall meeting event, which would come in the form of a report that says who participated, how long did they stay on the call, did they ask a question, how was their question answered, how long did they stay on, did they stay on for a full hour? And that kind of goes to the question that was up here from Sherry asking about integrating our tools. Well, our tools will come to you in an Excel spreadsheet that you could dump into any advocacy technology that you wanted to.
Great points, Patrick. Yeah, and so following the event, in addition to those statistics and the detailed report, you're also going to get a recording of the telephone town hall itself. So this is something that you can use to generate content for your websites, podcasts. You really can extend the life of your campaign. It's not a static hour. And then we also had a question from Ruth. Ruth was asking if we're going to get a video or a transcript of the presentation today. Amy, she just chimed in perfect. So she's going to make that recording available later today. Excellent. And
we do encourage everybody here, if they can, to, we'll be reaching back to you on how you responded back to the polling questions, of course, and all that kind of stuff. But we'll be reaching back to you also to see if you wanted to have us do some sort of presentation to you. We do demos all the time. Thank goodness I'm not on them, because there's much better people like Patrick and Sean that know what they're talking about, it seems. And they can answer all your questions on a one-on-one basis. And so when we reach out to you, if you want to get some sort of scheduled demo with us to go over all these questions individually, we'd be more than happy to accommodate you on that, as opposed to just, picking through this presentation to try and figure stuff out. There's so much to learn, especially when we do a demo. We actually do a demo doing a telephone town hall. We actually call up most of the personnel in my company and so on and so forth as guinea pigs to use, as if they were people we were going to be calling anyway. And we show you how the questions come in and all that kind of stuff. We give you the behind the scenes look to show you how all this stuff works. This is just an overall presentation. But again, we encourage you to do, a demo with us. And if you do decide to do business with us and stuff like that, we would have a dress rehearsal of all this before we actually go and do the show. You need to do that. It doesn't cost any more. It's worth it. You'll get much more out of your show if you invest the time on really getting your act together before you do any of these particular events, whether it be a telephone town hall or use any of the other services that we brought up today. Back to you, Sean.
Yeah, those are great points. And we talked about live voice broadcasts and live direct to voicemail being easy to set up. So are telephone town halls. I mean, you've got a really seasoned team of individuals on this call today. And once you schedule your event, we've done tens of thousands of events. And so we really equip you with best practices, again, full service staffing. We help you with, okay, well, do you want to ask polling questions to collect feedback from your audience during the event? We think 3 or 4 are the best. Here's where you should ask them. And so the only thing that your organization has to worry about is really just talking to your supporters, talking to your members, focus on the conversation itself. And that's what you should be doing. You don't need to worry about the technology or anything else.
Thank you, Sean.
Okay. Amy, I think we're ready to wrap up. I know we have some more questions, but I think this is about all the time that we have this afternoon.
Amy, save us, please.
Thanks everyone for joining
Hi,
us.
Amy.
Hi guys. Thanks for joining us. You'll get a recording later this afternoon with all of this and all the slides, so you'll be able to have their contact information as well. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to CNE as well. And we'll see you guys next time. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye now.